means for Caleb.
I think Caleb will be fine. I mean, Rome Odunze is their #1 receiver. Luther Burden has shown that he's good. They got the tight ends. Loveland,
Yes.
I mean, was better than Komet for them. So, they're fine. I don't know. I don't want to overplay or overstate whatever issues may have been with him and Moore. A lot of people have done that, particularly with that miscommunication. There seemed to be a little frustration or tension there. I don't think it was too much, but I just think they'll be fine without it. They got enough weapons and talent. And, Colin was saying, do they use some of the money they've cleared up to go get a Maxx Crosby or maybe the center Tyler Linderbaum? So, yeah, I mean, I think they'll be fine. They got enough receivers.
Yeah, so I agree with that piece of it. I think had they not traded him, he would have gone into next year as their 4th option. Because I think Colson Loveland's going to be their #1 option. That was Ben Johnson's first pick.
Yep.
He was excellent. You saw Burden come on at the end of last year in particular, and, they spent a high pick on him. And Odunze, they obviously spent a very high pick on before Ben Johnson got there. And so I think that they are, I don't want to say they're not going to miss DJ Moore, but if he was going to be their 4th option, $24 million to be the Bills' #1 receiver is a bargain. $24 million to be the Bears' 4th option is a misallocation of resources.
And I don't think they'll miss him. As good as I think he is and as like him for Buffalo, I think they'll.
I don't think you miss him as long as your guys stay healthy. You know what I mean? And so that's the concern. But you went somewhere where similar place I was going. They now have picks 25, 57, and 60. Would you trade those 3 picks for Maxx Crosby? A late first and 2 late seconds. 25, 57, 60.
Yes.
I think I would. They're right there on the cusp. It's time to win. He gets you,
And so now
the win-win. The Raiders win. They get a bunch of assets.
They get a bunch of assets. You have the money to do it.
Yeah.
You could still spend money, to your point, on Linderbaum. You could try to address offensive line in free agents. And again, they're in a weird spot because I think they feel left tackle's Tooney, who's great, and right guard, right tackle is set, but their left tackle had a terrible injury during the playoffs and their center retired. So they do need to address that. There's no doubt about it. But I think now you have, for the Raiders, if you are trying to get Maxx Crosby, the 60th pick is probably more attractive to the Raiders than DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting. I mean, listen, I agree with in terms of the offense. I think the offense, this is totally fair for the Chicago Bears to move on from DJ Moore, and it's not going to affect Caleb. Like Nick took my take where, with Loveland like this, I look at this as a run-first tight end offense at this point. We know Ben Johnson wants to be able to run the ball, and I just think Loveland, I think you're crazy if you have a great quarterback or a quarterback that's ascending. I think you're absolutely crazy if you do not try to develop a Mahomes-Kelsey relationship for your quarterback and tight end. I think it just doesn't make any sense. And when we look at 2 of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it, what's the actual only? They have 2 common denominators: 1, elite coaching, and awesome tight end play. So literally historically great tight ends. All-time great tight ends. That's counts for something. So I think there will be a continued focus on that dynamic, on that relationship. But yeah, the O-line is a problem. And if you can't run the ball, since we know Ben Johnson wants to be able to run the ball as much as he can and as successfully as he can, if you do have some O-line issues, that's something to be aware about. And also, the other thing is that the center for the Bears was responsible for protections, and that was not something that Caleb was necessarily doing at this time of his, at this time of his career, period. I don't know what the trajectory was for him when it was time for him to start to kind of take on some of that responsibility himself. It seems like different coaches and different teams have kind of different philosophies, and depending on how much you trust the center and whatnot. So I think I think it all depends, honestly. So I don't know what their developmental trajectory necessarily was for the Bears, or I guess I should say for Caleb specifically. But I mean, at the core of it, out of all the things that they're trying to figure out right now, the Chicago Bears, this probably matters the least to me. You know, in terms of moving off from TJ Moore and what impact it'll have in terms of the net positive or the net negative for the Bears, it's really kind of just neutral, honestly. And like Nick just kind of said, I'm agreeing a lot with Nick today. Is if you get injured, right, and just the depth, it's a major luxury to have, but that it's just that, right, a luxury, not a necessity. Now, the other conversation, which you know, this was a short segment, you know, they're done here. That's a whole another conversation in itself if you want to give away all that draft capital and go get Maxx Crosby. It is interesting because I think they want 2 first for Maxx Crosby, and I think they could potentially get that, honestly. And so I guess if you could give, what was it, a first and 2 seconds, I think they said. Is that what it was? I forget, honestly. I think at this point it's so how do I want to look at this? You trade all that draft capital and you go out and get a Maxx Crosby. I do think you're in a great situation here, but now you do have to pay Max, and now you do have to rework the offensive line. I'm just not so sure that the Bears are a Maxx Crosby away from winning it all. And I just think potentially those draft picks are valuable. And I think that, you know, if you draft well, especially defensively in the first and second round, you can have some impact players that you also now don't have to pay. And then now that does put you in even a more flexible situation. I understand taking the swing at Maxx Crosby. I kind of go back and forth. And again, I love Maxx Crosby. I think Maxx Crosby is awesome. I think he's great, and any team is going to be better with him without a question of a doubt. And if they trade and get Maxx Crosby, I'll be celebrating it. I'll be exciting it. I'll be like, look, this is awesome. But I don't see them as just a Maxx Crosby away from winning at all. And so then the question is, okay, well, what else they need now? We know they do got to figure out the O-line, but even just defensively. And so I just wonder if those picks in this moment of time are too valuable. It's almost like you'd prefer, and this doesn't work with the exact timeline, but it's almost like you'd prefer to draft right now, go through this draft, and then next year's draft capital now. Now, you trade for Maxx Crosby, right? Like that I would feel way more comfortable doing. I would feel way more comfortable doing. And this is where it is kind of a little bit of a shame that Maxx Crosby does feel like he's on his way out. Because if you make a mid-season trade, then you're in a little bit different of a situation, or I guess just even really just post-draft trade, kind of like what happened with the Cowboys and Micah. Then you're kind of like, all right, we are now really more mortgaging the future. Whereas in this situation, it's almost kind of like a split mortgage of the future, but you're also kind of risky in the present too, if that makes sense. Like in terms of what the Rams made, like they strictly were like, we're replacing our future picks because you're replacing today's picks, which can have a major impact on you this season. So yeah, which is why when the Cowboys traded Micah, I ripped them and said, you should have done it before the draft. Because if you're the team trading, you're like, oh yeah, I want to start this party right now. I want to go through this draft and start doing this. And because they didn't do it, the Cowboys were not good enough this year. Because he made that trade too late, where if he made the trade earlier, the Cowboys defense would have been better. And the Cowboys would have been better, and you wouldn't have wasted an awesome year out of Doc and that offense. So that's the kind of the moment that I'm wrestling with, and is there a way around that? Is it still maybe through free agency? Again, not a GM. I like to throw out the different ways of kind of looking at it and discussing it rather than just say he's great. Let's get him right now. We're going all in, and it's like, okay, but like you can go all in different ways. There's different ways of doing that. You can still go all in and utilize the draft capital, this draft that you have. So I don't know. I think it's this stuff is always a lot more complicated than anyone ever really wants to give credit for. And I repeat that a lot because I got to remind myself that, you know, because it's just I was talking about this in the comments section. Figuring this stuff out alone, just this part. Just figuring out draft capital, salary cap, trades, free agency. You guys realize that that's its own separate $1 million industry. It's its own separate wing of professionals that get paid a ton of money in the ecosystem. of the NFL. If we just remove that industry entirely separate from the NFL, it's its own $1 million industry. You got $1 million worth of experts trying to figure out how best to make this all make sense. And it's stressful. It's equivalent of us trying to sit around here trying to figure out how to maximize the revenue stream of YouTube. It's like, I don't know, show more ads. No, less ads, but longer video. It's like, I don't know, man, more views, but less ads, or more ads, but less views, shorter videos, longer videos, shorts, quick cuts. Like, I don't know. So it's, it gives me a headache, honestly, because I want to be able to be the expert. I want to be able to figure out, but I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to do what people get, I'm not going to be able to just casually do $1 million industry just sitting at home. Just not going to do it. I mean, I'm not at home. I'm in a studio, clearly. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about not only the DJ Moore trade, but then also the potential to trade, all the valuable draft capital for Maxx Crosby? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get to some discussions, let's get some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.